let me show you how to turn this into a syllabus of lesson plans for your whole semester. Hello, welcome to Atlas Teaching. My name is Megan, and I have been an ESL teacher in Southern China for the past 10 years. Today, I'm going to show you how to take this, a textbook, and turn it into a syllabus full of lesson plans for your whole semester. Now, when I first started teaching ESL, my first semester, the school literally handed me a textbook and said, show up on Monday morning. And I was so overwhelmed. I had no idea how to take a textbook and turn it into lessons, let alone how to turn it into a full syllabus with all the ideas for the whole semester. After a few years of trying, I finally figured out a system that I do every single semester. So at the beginning of every semester, these are the 5 steps that I do to prepare an entire syllabus, and hopefully it can help you too. Step number 1, we're actually going to put the textbook away, and first we're going to look at our schedule. This is actually going to be the most important part, because before we open the textbook, we need to know how many lessons we need to create during the whole semester. So first, I get my schedule, and most schools will arrange their schedule according to weeks. So I look at how many weeks I have during the semester, and also how many times my class will meet during those weeks. So if I have 18 weeks and the class meets 1 time a week, then I know I need to make 18 lessons for the whole semester. So first, get out your schedule, find out how many classes total you will need. Tip: don't forget any holidays or 3-day weekends. If you have a spring break or something like President's Day or Memorial Day, then your schedule might be a little bit off and you might not actually have 18 lessons you need to prepare because of some holidays. So first, go through your schedule and find out how many lessons you'll need to prepare. Now, I have my schedule right here in the computer, so let's go check out how many lessons I'll actually need for this semester with this textbook. Okay, let's go check it out right now. Okay, so let me set you down right here and let's look at my schedule for this semester. So it looks crazy and half of it is in Chinese, but that advanced comprehensive English is the class that I'm looking at. So it looks like I have this class from weeks 1 to 10. We don't have week 11. We have week 12. We don't have weeks 13 to 14, and then we have weeks 15 to 18. My goodness, this semester is a mess. Okay, probably we have 1 week for the May Day labor holiday, and then probably that week 13 and 14 is some kind of practical week. Often in the spring semester, my students will do some like volunteer work, or they have some special extra classes that they have to go to instead of my class. So actually, that means I only have 15 weeks then that I'm actually teaching the lesson. So I only have to do 15 lessons this week or this semester. That's not bad. That's actually very, very low. Okay, I get a nice little vacation, at least from those classes during that time. Okay, so now I know I have 15 weeks, so I have 15 lessons that I need to prepare for this class. Okay, so now I know that I need 15 different lessons this semester. Now is it time to open our textbook? Not yet. First, we need to think about the exams. Now, I know that might feel like we're putting the cart before the horse, but it's almost like in those murder mystery books or movies, you have to know the ending before you know the beginning. The same goes with planning your syllabus. I need to think about my final exam because I need to know how many of my lessons are going to be taken up by the exam. If I'm going to do a written exam, then maybe I only need one day to do that exam. We have everybody doing the written exam together, so I only need 1 week to do the exam. However, I'm thinking for this class, I'm going to do a spoken exam. 99% of the time, I choose to do a spoken or an oral exam. So I need a little bit more time. I know that most of my classes have around 35 to 40 students. So that's not enough time for everyone to give their exam in one lesson. That means I'll need probably 2 lessons. So I found out that I need 15 lessons for this semester. Now I'm thinking I'll need 2 weeks for my exam, which actually means I only need to prepare 13 lessons from this textbook. Now that I've thought about my exam, I know how many real lessons I have that I need to pull from this textbook. Step number 3, we can finally open the textbook. I know I need 13 lessons from this textbook. So the best case scenario is that I open this up and there are 13 chapters. So fingers crossed. Let's open it up and see how many chapters are going to be here. Because if there are 13 chapters, my life just became so much easier. 1 lesson per chapter. Good to go. Okay, we have 12 lessons in this textbook. So that means that I have 1 extra lesson that I need to figure out what to do with. That's not that bad though. That's okay. I will definitely take that. So I know now I have 12 lessons right here. Chapter number 1 is called brands. Chapter number 2, travel. Chapter number 3, change. I can just plug these into my syllabus now. Week 1, week 2, week 3, and so on. I have 1 extra lesson that I need to create though. What can I do for that lesson? There are usually a couple of different options that I have when I have an extra lesson like this. One is just to include a fun lesson completely from your own brain or your own repertoire of lessons that you have. You could just take 1 week to watch a TV show or watch parts of a movie and learn dialogue from that. You could have this be a fun culture lesson where everyone just talks about different cultures. During the fall semester, if I have an extra lesson, I often turn that lesson into a Christmas lesson. So for the whole class, we're just talking about Christmas, sharing things about Christmas. We're learning Christmas songs, watching clips from Christmas movies. Super fun. You can just choose a fun class for that extra class. Another thing you can do is you can add a bookend class. And this is something I might do this semester. I'll have to look at it a little bit closer. But a bookend class is basically an extra class at the beginning or at the end of your semester. So instead of jumping into chapter number 1 for our first week, I could make the first week just an introduction, that we don't even open the textbook on the first day. Instead, we're getting to know each other. I'm learning names. I'm introducing the class rules. Things like that could be the whole first lesson. On the opposite end, if I wanted to do a bookend at the end of the semester, I could have 1 extra review lesson before the final exam. That maybe we review all the things that we've discussed this semester. We go over vocabulary words. I give them a few extra tips for their final exam. If it's something like a presentation, maybe I can give them a good amount of class time to study for the exam and prep for the exam that's coming in the next class. So you could do a really fun lesson, you can do a bookend lesson, an introduction lesson, or a review lesson before the final exam. And the last idea is you could expand on one of the chapters. So I could actually go through the textbook and see if there are any chapters that are extra interesting, that maybe I could make a part 1 and part 2. Now, just looking at it right now, I feel like the travel lesson would be really interesting. Chapter 2 is called travel. So maybe I could have week 1 be chapter 1, week 2 be travel part 1, and then week 3 is travel part 2. So you can also look through the book and see on what you want to expand upon. Now we have our basic structure, we have our skeleton, we have our outline for this syllabus. Now it's time to open up the textbook and really go through it. And this time, I'm not just looking at the table of contents, I'm really flipping through each page to see the content of the textbook. Now, what am I going to look for? One thing I'll look for is what topics and what chapters are really good. Which ones have a lot of fun activities, a lot of practical use in them, because maybe I can expand upon one of those chapters. Maybe I open up chapter number 2 about travel and I find out that the content is just not very good, or there's not a lot of content. Maybe I find out that one of the following chapters actually has a lot of information, and I want to turn that chapter into a 2-part lesson. I also really just like to go through and mark which activities, which exercises are good and which ones are not so good. And I do this rather quickly. I look at the English level and I think, maybe it's a little bit too complex for them. So I'll put an X next to any of the activities or exercises or articles that I just don't think I'm going to want to use. Now later, when I sit down to really plan each individual lesson, I can look at them again, but it just makes my lesson planning so much easier when I can open up the chapter and see a check mark next to the activities or the exercises that I think are really valuable, and see an X next to the ones that I don't think are as valuable. So I will actually take a few minutes and go through this and just mark it up right in my notes. And I often find that I get some ideas while I do this as well. Maybe I want to add an extra speaking activity, or I think of something else that I can do with a fun game or a fun warm-up, and I will just jot it in my notes. Basically, this gives me peace of mind for the coming semester, but it also helps me know which chapters I want to expand upon. And I also look to see if there are any chapters that are just terrible that I need to remove. A few semesters ago, there was a whole chapter about how to write a letter, like a physical letter. And I ended up eliminating that chapter because I didn't think it was very useful. The next chapter was about writing emails, and I felt like that was way more useful. So instead of talking about letters and emails, we just talked about emails for 2 lessons instead. So I'm looking through the textbook, giving it a skim to see what I want to use, what seems to be good, and what maybe I want to eliminate. Now that I've read through the chapters, I've looked through the textbook, now it's really time to make those decisions. So I go through each chapter and each lesson and I connect the 2. My school wants to see which chapter I'll be using for each week in my syllabus. So then I just plug them all into the structure. And just like that, I have my syllabus. Now, if you have a really bad book, you might have to do some extra work and thinking of creative activities you can add, what things you can expound upon, which chapters you can really flesh out. A few semesters ago, I had a textbook with only 6 chapters, and I had to come up with 17 or 18 lessons from that. To be honest, that was really tough, but I had to really look through the textbook and see how much I could pull from it from each of the topics. I think the first chapter was all about jobs, and I turned that first chapter into 3 different lessons. In the first lesson, we talked about dream jobs. In the second lesson, we talked about how to do well in a job interview and answer questions. And the third lesson, we talked about how to make an English resume. So I took the topic of that really short, really bad chapter, and I was able to expand it to create 3 decent lessons from it. So next time you get your textbook and you get your schedule, don't worry about making a syllabus. First, just see how many lessons you will need for that semester. Don't forget things like holidays or field trips that you have going on. Number 2, think about your exams. How many weeks will the exams take? And then you'll know how many proper lessons you'll need to plan. Then see how many chapters are in your book and look through the book to see what great activities you have and which lessons you can expand upon and which ones you should eliminate. Then, step by step, just plug in the chapters and the weeks that you need for your syllabus. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below. You can always send an email, and you can check out the blog post at atlasteachingesl.com for even more information. Okay, that's all for today. Happy planning.